Thursday. On behalf of our entire faculty and staff here in the Wolfpack Den, it gives me honor and it gives me pleasure to welcome you all. So on behalf of my EWA family as well as my Clayton County Public School family, I welcome you all here to the Wolfpack Den. As we all know, we are here to talk about our most valuable resource, and that's our children. We've come today to see how we can collaborate with one another to ensure that we are giving them the best service that we possibly can. So again, on behalf of EWA and Clayton County Public Schools, welcome to the Wolfpack Den. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce a gentleman that I consider to be a very strong leader. If you will, please help me give a round of applause to our superintendent, Dr. Morcease Beasley.
Thank you, Mary. Good to see you. Every time I come to this campus, I'm just impressed. It feels like a college campus. And then when I see the uniform, if you will, that just makes me even more impressed. But thank you, Ms. McFerrin. Let's give her a hand, a strong principal. Doing good work here at NY Academy. We want to thank you. There you go. Give me some room to walk around. And thank you again for the opportunity. We want to recognize our board chair who's here, Dr. Adamson. Thank you for being here. We know that we've got several things going on, but this was one of those add-on meetings, right, Jada, that we did just to kind of close the loop on a few things and also to ensure that we share, as you have an agenda, a few items. And so it's not intended to last a long time, but it will give you an opportunity to hear some brief updates and to ask any questions or to share any information that you think would be helpful to us. We're very appreciative. We want to first give you a chance, just in case you don't know, to see the senior team members and others who may be here. So the team members that are here, will you stand and just be recognized? We've got, of course, our Chief of Safety and Security, Chief Treywick, our Chief of HR, Dr. Wilson. We've got our Compliance and Equity leader, Damaris Garrett. We've got Jada Dawkins as our Chief Communications, PR, marketing person. And of course, we've got some of her team, Mr. White, Ronald over here. It's just great to have you all here. And I think we've got some staff members from Eddie White. And you got to help me out. I can't see all those shirts. What's on that shirt?
Second language learning.
Second language learning. So we got our interpreter here. Yes. Very good. Good to have you here as well. Very good. I see someone back there. I've seen that face before. It's good to have you here as well. Thank you all for being here. Any parents? I see mom. Do I see a parent? Yes. Very good. He's into that phone. That's all right. He's into that phone. Let's see. I see a parent, staff member. Very good. We're glad to have you all as well. But thank you again for being here on tonight. So let's just talk about the agenda. The purpose is really, it's kind of like a close the conversation as we end the year. We wanted to get through with the critical conversations before the month of March ended, because when we returned in April, it's about making sure that kids are testing, doing well, and as we close the year out, we're trying to make sure that we have as few disruptions as possible at the local school level. We're not going to have any more meetings than are absolutely necessary in the month of April and May. And we know we've got, of course, we look forward to graduations. This year we're doing a Val-Sal recognition event that will occur on April 10th, I believe it is, April 10th. And that invitations are being finalized. We'll get that to you all. We'll be so pleased to recognize our Vals and Sals at the April 10th board meeting. So very quickly, Advanced Ed. What can I say about Advanced Ed that you probably haven't already heard, right? We were recommended will be recommended for accreditation by the 11-member Advanced Ed team. So let's give our school system a round of applause. That's a good thing. And I tell people, I said, notice we recommended that we continue our accreditation. So we are accredited. We were in an accredited district before this week, and we are for the next 5 years, right? And so that's just a part of what we do as educators. It affirms that we're doing the right work. They identified 3 powerful practices. I believe that's the word they were using in the PowerPoint, powerful practices. One being professional learning. They thought we were doing a great job in our district in professional learning. Number 2, organizational effectiveness. They just thought that from the board on down to the teachers, the principals, that there was an alignment of the expectation that we were working on the right work and working to improve the areas that we needed to improve. And thirdly, they identified for the presentation yesterday that they shared that they thought they saw a pretty nice alignment between standards and practice. And that was pretty good. We'll get a more detailed report within 30 days or so, and we'll share that once we receive it. They identified an improvement priority, as they described it, as needing to ensure that we have a formal structure for student advocacy. Basically, in other words, to ensure that we have processes in place that are consistent at every school to advocate on the behalf of students, which I believe that's a great recommendation for us to ensure. While they did mention that they saw it as they visited campuses, and they visited about a third of our schools, I did think it was most appropriate to ensure that we have a formalized structure, one that's even conveyed in our student handbook. And so we'll be working to do that. They did share that there were many more powerful practices in all of the standards, and we were one of the very few districts where they have identified so many powerful practices for each of the standards. So, but of course, all of those were not shared. So again, we look forward to receiving the report that will give us more information. They interviewed over 650 people, including parents, students, administrators, teachers, etc., central office staff members, community members, and leaders. And they basically just affirmed that we are working and doing the right work here in Clayton County. They recognize and acknowledge that the areas that we need to be working on to improve, that we're doing just that. We're working on those areas, and we're going to, and clearly improving in those areas. So we're very pleased for the results. You should know, relative to the strategic plan, that as you know, the board extended the current plan until the end of June of this year, and we're in the process of developing a draft of the new strategic plan, and we'll present that to the board at the end of April. The new strategic plan, the board has already approved the vision, the mission, and the belief statements, and the goals. And from the goals, the staff is working on the performance objectives, which basically leads into initiatives and leads into action steps. That will basically compose the entire strategic plan. We'll present that to the board at the end of April for review, a draft of that to the board for review and approval, and for implementation beginning July 1. And so once we get that information framed up, we'll share the draft of those, if you will, the performance objectives, the goals, and the actions. We'll share that, of course, in a press release so everybody will see. And then, of course, once the board approves the official plan, we'll share that it's all official. But we are making progress, and basically that plan will help guide our work over the next 3 to 5 years. And it will be in alignment clearly at every level to show, and our budget will be aligned to the plan to ensure that we're focused on the right work. You'll notice this year, once you see the draft, that we're not trying to do 100 things and none of them well. We're trying to do very few things, and the few things we know that are working, do them so well that we fundamentally shift our outcomes in the right direction. So that's the Advanced Ed Strategic Plan update. Number 2, the budget. We've got 2 things that are occurring this year. I've got the current budget that we are implementing and that we're monitoring fiscal year 18. And while we're monitoring our fiscal year 18 budget, we're building our fiscal year 19 budget. We will be presenting to the board at the end of April also a draft of the tentative budget for their review and adoption. And we're working offline to ensure that we have identified appropriately all of our projected revenues, that we've identified all of our potential expenditures, including what's fixed, what's discretionary. We're going through previous budgets, and we're actually going line by line, deciding if this is an expenditure, if this is one that we need to carry over to the next year. We're working to ensure that we have a balanced budget, where that basically means that our revenues equal our expenditures, that we don't dip into the fund balance. Our work this year is to try to mitigate some of our expenditures from dipping into our fund balance as much as less as possible. And so over the years, once we get a balanced budget and the board approves the budget, the next year, 2 or 3 will be critical to us actually strengthening our fiscal position. We're looking at all options as we look at our revenue and we look at our expenditures. We've got a little gap that we're working to address and figuring out ways how do we reduce some fixed costs. How do we also reduce, to the extent that we can, some expenditures relative to salaries and benefits? We're looking at possibly class size considerations. We're looking at just whatever we need to do to ensure that we start the year out with all the teachers that we need to have, and at the same time in a position that we can maintain our operations and focus on teaching and what? Teaching and learning, and that's exactly what we're working to do. I tell people it will be a little tighter next year. Time to tighten the belt. You know, there are some times when your family just has to tighten the belt. And so we're at a point where everybody's got to do what? Tighten the belt. That's okay. That comes with the territory. And as we do it, tighten the belt well, we strengthen ourselves. Then as time goes on, as we see that revenue continue to increase and expenditures decrease, or at least not increase, I think we'll find ourselves in a better, much better position. So that's really where we are with the budget. And so we'll have some community meetings that we've scheduled for the month of April relative to sharing the information about the budget after we present some information to the board on our next board meeting, which will be, the work session is this Monday, and then we won't have the board meeting until April 10th, which is that Tuesday after spring break. So we won't meet that Monday after spring break. The board will meet that Tuesday after spring break, and then that week we'll have, I want to say that week and maybe the next week we'll have some meetings to share the budget information as we prepare to recommend the draft to the board at the end of April. And lastly that I have is we're getting ready for our Georgia Milestones Assessment System testing. Our first group to start testing will be our high school students, our secondary in the core subjects. They'll start testing at the end of April. I want to say April 26th or 23rd. Thank you, sir. They'll start testing at April 23rd. Because of the loss of instructional days, we moved the elementary and the middle school testing back about 14 days. So they'll test starting May 8th, I believe it is. May 8th. And so we couldn't move the high school students back because we would basically compromise the ability to get their results back in time so we could get them graduated. And so we didn't have any room in that area. But we believe that everybody's working diligently to prepare our students, and we're excited. And we believe that our data is going to be much improved from where we were last year, previous years. Our teachers, our principals, you should know the students are learning the grade level content. They're in classes as we visit schools. We're observing classrooms. We're giving feedback. We're providing support. But we also have identified, listen to this, about 32,000 students who are not at the lowest end, because they're getting a lot of support at the low end. But these kids right here in the middle who are not necessarily proficient, but they've just kind of been in the middle without getting that additional support for a few years. And so we've identified those students. We're working, principals and all are providing those students additional instruction using an online tool in reading and math. We call it iReady in grades K-8. And at the high school level 9-12, we call it Achieve 3000 and Odysseyware. Those students right now are working to eliminate deficits that they may have in reading and math, and we believe that's going to help many of them to fundamentally change their outcomes. Instead of performing in that, what we call that developing category, we believe that a lot of them, and hopefully more than not, will find themselves at the proficient category and the distinguished category, thereby fundamentally shifting our data where we have a majority of our students performing at the proficient and distinguished categories. It may not happen as much as we'd like to see it this year because we started using this tool after we secured it first semester. So we started in January after we trained and we rolled out, and schools are really getting in the flow of implementing it. But we know when we start school in and when we come back after the summer, even though they can use the tool over the summer, which is a plus, students can use it over the summer. We know when we return for the next school year 18-19, we'll begin to start from day one. And so we know that we'll build that momentum, and we'll continue to build on the momentum, and we will fundamentally see a lot of our kids performing at the proficient level. We're pleased to share that we even scooped down, even though they start testing in the 3rd grade, we purchased enough licenses to start with our kids in the second grade. So they can eliminate those deficits, so when they land in the third grade, they'll be more than likely to end the third grade on grade level and higher. And if we can get them on grade level and higher, I believe we can maintain them on grade level and higher. We also have some K2 pre-K initiatives going on, because our goal is to take away the gap before they even get to third grade. And so pre-K to second grade is really our chance to help provide support, to help kids really get in that the reading, the area of reading, to really do what they can to learn the 5 components of reading, to develop what it takes to comprehend, and the skill sets to be literate as they use those literacy strategies across all content areas. And so that's what we're doing there. So we're very excited. Always know that on the website we have practice materials. Schools clearly are doing their own events relative to preparing students. I believe that as we work together, schools and families and students work together, more of our kids will be successful. And we're just building on the successes, the strategies that we put in place that we know are working for our school system. And so with that being stated, I've provided the updates in the areas that I think are important for today. I'll pause to see if there are any questions or any comments.
Can you update us on the Delta situation? You did a very good job. I appreciate you all work, the protesting, getting kids involved, and very proud of you.
The Delta situation, where are we right now? As you well know, we worked through a solution with the governor's office and Delta. There were 2 parts to the solution. There was a part that focused on the governor providing a budget appropriation for the county and the cities. And then the other part was us working with Delta to ensure that the school system had what it needed to ensure we didn't have a gap in our SPLOST funds. Well, we worked through that solution, and Delta even conveyed to us the amount of money that we would be getting from Delta to ensure that we had no gap in our SPLOST funds. Well, between them doing that and deciding to support the NRA, you all know what happened with Lieutenant Governor Cagle and others, and basically they removed the fuel taxes from exemption. And so the taxes are still being collected. And so as far as we know, right now, we're still collecting the taxes, and we'll still infuse our SPLOST program. But at the same time, we had our federal litigation occurring in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. We had oral arguments on March 9th. I attended the oral arguments. They didn't last no more than, I would say, 30 minutes because they have a very timed process for that. And we're waiting to see what the decision is. And whatever the decision is, it probably gives us an opportunity to continue to address the issue, keep the can down the road, collect the taxes until the outcome is definitive. And so we'll see. I'll be meeting with the lawyers to discuss some options depending on the ruling of the 11th Court of Appeals, Circuit Court of Appeals. But I'll tell you this, either way it goes, we'll win. Our kids will get what they need. Delta's going to follow through on their commitment. They know us. I'll have another protest. Just joking. But we're glad to know, and we're working with Delta, and they're pleased to ensure, and I believe the governor has sealed the deal for the solutions for the cities and the government in the event that we're not successful in the area of litigation. And so we pause, take a deep breath, and hopefully focus on teaching and learning so we don't have to deal with that issue, at least for right now, waiting to see what happens.
I heard you mention about the developing and the proficient students when it comes to testing. Have we identified any recurring problems or anything that kind of stands out as to why so many kids are falling in that area? The reason why I ask is because since birth, I put my kids there. They kind of fall in that area when it comes to the standardized testing. However, since day one, kindergarten, birth, et cetera, we constantly in the library, we constantly reading at the house. you constantly taking tests, et cetera, et cetera. However, when it comes to the standardized testing, they follow and develop proficient. So have we identified as to why that might happen?
That's a good question. Let me tell you what's occurring that as I continue to read that issue. If you look at the statewide results, it's happening across the state. It's just not our kids. It's happening across the state. Where when we were on the old test, the CRCT, you know, we were in the 80 and 90 passing rates. And now we're under the Georgia Milestones across the state. We're low. Even while there's a gap between us and the state overall is still low in many of those content areas on every grade level. But I read an interesting article that, you know, they use the national standards. They benchmark the test items using rigorous items like NAEP, etc., to develop the Georgia Milestones. Well, there's some research right now that would suggest that our students are probably more competitive than what our assessments are giving them credit to be, because our assessments may be developed too rigorous when we compare our results to our assessments to other national or international assessments. There are several arguments going on right there, and so we just find ourselves in the middle of a few debates, if you will, about is the test too hard that our kids are not really getting the credit that they need, versus those who say the test is just right. And what do we compare it to? Because we developed it ourselves. I mean, our state test, you know, we pulled out a balanced score, we pulled out a smarter balance, and then the other group that was administering national assessments in our state decided to develop its own assessments, and they called it the Georgia Milestones. Well, the question is, what do we really compare it to? So I think that debate is going to go on for a while. And, you know, when the state developed our Georgia Milestones, they developed these 4 performance categories: beginning, developing, proficient, and distinguished. And so what we are noticing, a lot of the kids, as you described, studying hard, doing well, but when they take the test, they're still falling in that developing category. It's one of those situations where it looks like the state is experimenting with the kids. You know, they've got this rigorous assessment, but it is the reality until we figure out a way to alter that outcome, alter this focus on the use of the GMAS. And so it depends on who you talk to. I find myself in the middle. I want a rigorous test that's benchmarked according to international standards, but I also understand that if the tests are by design inherently built in such a way that they're making it look like our kids are doing less than possibly others, whether it be nationally or internationally, I think over time I'm hopeful that we'll get that corrected. But one thing we've done, our board has done, is we're not using the test to hold students back. We developed our own internal process. Our board has laid that policy aside right now. And so I really just want our kids to learn and learn well and show progress. Of course, if they can get in that proficient and distinguished category, we want them there. But we want kids, wherever you start, acknowledge where you start, work hard, and show progress. Show progress. And that's exactly what we're working to do. And that's our message to our principals. We want them proficient and high. But we also understand that we may be in a situation where we have an assessment that just looking at the overall state outcomes may have some inherent flaws in it. But it is what it is. Let's make sure that our kids are showing growth. Showing growth. And that's really our focus.
Well, I would say that I guess in my opinion, is the quickest solution would have been, and you can't go back in the past, but it would have been that, okay, you knew this test was coming. Why not go ahead and change your classroom style for its teaching? Day one, as soon as August hit, that's how the kids are kind of adapt their mind to learn that style of language that's on their test. Because when I saw the test, and I was looking at a couple of questions, even myself as an adult, I have a college degree. I had to read a couple of those questions like 2 or 3 times because it's like real tricky. How they have a question. I'm like, okay, are you saying this? Are you saying that? And if I'm an adult with a college degree, and I'm questioning imagine a child who's not necessarily exposed to that style, per se, you expect them to know it already and actually pass it.
And that's what you really have to describe one of the challenges we have. We have these standards, and we're trying to make sure first that the teachers understand the standards and that they teach to the level of the rigor of the standards. But then also, as they do that they've got to be mindful that the questions and how they assess the question may be somewhat differently than how the state may assess the question. So a part of our work is to ensure that the teachers know how the state is going to assess the question, so as they plan and they teach, they can show students those strategies and those tactics, I guess, that the state will use on these tests to distractors. That's the term we use in the testing world, of distractors. How to identify what the distractors are and how to respond around those distractors so you can get the problem right. It's unfortunate, but that's just the reality that we're dealing with right now. But you got a good point. I read that you read a lot of questions on the release items that the state has posted that our principals and teachers and parents can see now. You do have to read some of the questions more than once. And that's why we encourage using the items not just the week before the test, but daily as a part of the instructional process.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, they want always, we don't expect instant results right now, but you stagger it in as the year progresses. But still, first day of school, you're being exposed to it. Because remember, I'm an advocate that nobody exposed a child to something, they probably pick up more than you think.
We agree with that. Totally.
So,
thank you.
they won't know unless you're exposed.
That's true. That is true.
Good afternoon. This question is twofold for you. With so many students in the classroom suffering from behaviors and mental illness issues, what is the school system doing to help the teachers and the schools become better equipped to handle these students? And why doesn't each school get their own behavior therapists instead of sharing with several other schools? Because it's hard, and I am an educator for Clayton County, great anyway, and it's very hard for us to get those services for the kids when we only have one behavior therapist between 6 schools.
Well, that's a good question. I think first funding is an issue. Of course, we always limited resources. There are many things we like to secure and many ideas as to if we have this resource that will help this problem. Our data that we're monitoring shares or reflects that we are improving in discipline, but it doesn't take away the reality that from day to day we're going to deal with issues in the classroom. So to that end, part of our work is training, and as Advanced Ed has recognized us as a powerful practice, our professional learning will be rolling out for our new teachers coming into the school system, social emotional learning, restorative practices, just so they'll know how to respond to students. That's what we're learning. We're learning that sometimes it's just about how do you respond to not make the situation bigger than what it is. They're just kids, and sometimes you just got to know how to respond, and then we'll be working to train very strategically by looking at our data. We can identify where the challenges are, providing training as well. It's amazing, and I often say, sometimes we use blanket statements, but we got some teachers who have the same kids, and they don't have any discipline problems. It also has a lot to do with your approach, too, and how you respond. And so, everybody who knows, I believe in a balanced approach. And so we've got to train people to be reflective, how to anticipate, and to plan instructions so that you minimize those issues, right? But when they do occur, how do you respond? As not to make it worse than what it actually needs to be. And that's a lot of social emotional learning training, a lot of restorative justice practices, and culture and climate too. How do you have those cultures in the school, a climate in the school that supports high expectations, and then how does that look in every classroom in the school? But I would like to say that one thing I think we got to start saying is how bad our students are. I think we got to move away from that. Our students sometimes are just responding to a context or environment or not doing because of something, and we as the adults have got to continue to make sure we provide through training and conversations and opportunities the tools that they need in order to navigate their journey through K-12 and even beyond K-12. So it's working. You know, resources are limited, so we gotta be strategic, but I think there's some opportunities that we are clearly working toward in the area of training that I think over time will help the situation. And clearly, it is. Our expectation, us adults being consistent, I often say sometimes adults, they try to measure, they're heavy-handed with children when it comes to the behavior of children, but they don't want you to be as heavy-handed with them. And you gotta, as adults, we gotta learn that, you know, that heavy-handed approach is not the solution. We gotta have high expectations, get better organized in our management, et cetera, in our preparation. But when things happen, and they will, because they're just kids. When things happen, respond appropriately as not to make it bigger than what it is, not to minimize it, but not to make it bigger than what it is, and to help kids make better choices. You know, something's wrong when a kid, something as silly as just talking to appear in class, but they go home, they got to be suspended for 5 days. Come on, talking. There's a way to handle it. I need something to talk about. Come up to the board and do this problem. You know, there are just strategies and ways, and we've got to do more of that. One of our challenges, I think, related to that is as we, many of our veteran teachers leave the field, and we've got a lot of new teachers coming into the field, sometimes we've got to help them be prepared to deal with this new reality. It may not be like what they may have been used to, and so we got to help them to understand that, you know, children have changed, times have changed. Children have changed, but children are still the same. It's all in your technique and your strategies and your communication, your relationships, and how you respond to them. So there's more to work in that area.
But what about the students coming in with a mental illness, though? I mean, I understand the regular students, but what about those students that we are getting, you know, those mental illnesses that... Well,
you know, mental illness is, you know, is something that has to be diagnosed, and so we got mental health issues, I think. But I've seen a lot of adults with some mental health issues too. And so I think we've got some work to do, and part of our training is to address and to show people how to identify and respond to those type issues. But I tell you this, like I just said, it's just not all the children. We all need to get a little bit healthy mentally. Because how you respond, how you feel about yourself, often dictates how you respond to what other people. And so that it's just such a complex area, but just more work to do. Things we need the children to do, but there are things we got to do as adults. When I say adults, I mean parents and teachers, all of us administrators. We've got to all work together to address that issue. Good question. Any other questions? Okay.
All right. Once again, I work for Eddie White. They're building houses all around us. When does the district plan on rezoning? Because I feel like our school, we have 14,373 kids in our building.
You don't have 14,000.
I mean, not 14,000, 1,400. Excuse me, 1,400 kids in the Wolfpack kids. So this is a lot of kids. So what are we doing to rezoning? And with the growth, are we thinking about opening a school in the area, or? Well,
we are, as you know, and you may have heard or may not have heard, we will be building a new facility in this area. We're purchasing land, in the process of purchasing land now, and that school will be built with funding in the next block. So we are monitoring that area. We decided with the board support to pause the enrollment balancing. We are meeting with the Clayton County Government Planning Department so we can keep up with all the development that's occurring. And the new school is going to help us relieve some of the issues in this area. This is a growing area, so this is an area that's at the top of the radar. With all this land down here, and you know, the apartment complexes, right? Residential, you know, the single family dwelling, etc. So we're monitoring that. And one thing I can say about this is a pretty large, you said 1,400 students, right? Pretty large campus, so we're just basically monitoring that, working toward building another facility that we'll be able to use in conjunction with this facility to help us accommodate that growth. And that's why this area has a school on the SPLOS for building.
And what's our projected date to get this
Well, I don't know where it falls in the rollout as we get through we're purchasing the land now. You know, the current SPLOST ends in December of 2019, December of next year, and then the SPLOST 6 referendum, we'll put it out with the board's support. We'll put it out. Our plan is to put it out for a vote in March of next year if we get it to pass, and then we'll begin to implement those projects. I just don't remember where that project is on the list. But in light of the growth here, it's probably one of those projects to be sooner on the list than later. Okay.
Is it another K-8 school, and is it library?
Well, our goal is to build a facility. We're looking at basically building an elementary school, K-5, and then this facility would probably be 6th grade.
You got younger with your older, and even though there's a difference only 1 to 2 years, there's still a word of difference. Sometimes.
It's a big difference.
Sometimes.
And then we gotta recognize the facility, the needs of the facility and what we can do. And so the new school, after some thought, we thought should be an elementary school so we can house K-5 kids there and then let the 6-8 kids go here. We think that will help us. Hopefully, y'all will finish all this development down here so we don't have to figure out more land and build more schools. But we are going to build a school centrally, right? In the event that not as far as toward this area, but more centrally located, we'll purchase land in case we need to build another school. So we got that on the radar, just trying to be strategic. Okay. Well,
I'm coming in, but my question is Lovejoy High School. I don't know if it's in this discussion or not. But Lovejoy High School needs a lot of work done to it. Lovejoy High School has no accreditation that work over there for the kids. Plus, it needs to be rebuilt for some over too.
well, good question. Lovejoy High School is on the list to get a HVAC upgrade this summer. And so they'll get that. And it's also, I want to say on the list, Ronnie's not here, but we've got some renovations slated for that school as well. But I know this summer for sure is one of the priority HVAC upgrades, because as you know, we've dealt with the HVAC situation for some time. It's one of the older facilities, so it's on the list to get a new HVAC upgrade this summer.
Yeah, I asked something in that's already, and I apologize for that. First, I want to commend you on, I understand that there will no longer be a fee for volunteerism. In the past, I think they paid for
Yes.
that. Next thing I want to talk about is, if you answered this already, I'd be glad to talk about it after the meeting's over. Resource officers. I love this county. And recently I participated in the Leader of Camp school. I was in a school council. My question is this: I love this kind of community. I always defend it. And sometimes I go to the great odds try to defend things. We are making great progress. But when I was Sparks 5, and let me say this, I'm in favor of people getting a second chance. I'm not opposed to that. My God, I've had some second chances in my life. But when they said that there was no response from you, maybe you had a reason. I don't know the facts. And I'm saying, why did the PIO officer, why did somebody say we were looking into it? Why not respond at all? Why not give a response? If I'm missing something, you can respond to that.
I do. I don't mind responding. When I make a decision not to respond, that doesn't mean that we're not taking action. That's just, I choose not to engage publicly in that conversation. And that's a choice that I make, and that was my choice at that time.
You actually responded to it was a personnel-related matter.
Right.
Not
And
speaking.
that is my response. But
You chose not to.
if I choose not to engage in an interview, that's my choice. And I make those choices for very clear reasons.
And I understand the time the media will not do anything. I understand that.
But the media, I don't let the media drive my agenda on my response. And so this community, this is where you have to have confidence in the administration. And also, what we got to be careful as a community, we have issues that we're dealing with like Gwinnett and other places. We don't need to be the face of every issue. And I'm not going to allow that to be the case. You gotta have some confidence. I've been dealing with the media for many years. They know me very well. There are times that I will very intentionally offer a response. Personnel matters, that's just a slippery slope. I don't discuss personnel matters in a camera because we've got policies and procedures that we follow, we adhere to. What are they gonna ask that I can really say? Nothing. So it's not a good use of our time. It's not a good image builder for our school system. If there are issues, and we're working to address whatever issues we need to address, but we have, as a community, have got to don't allow others to dictate the agenda for us. And I want our community to understand that. There are many flawed individuals. Your superintendent is one of them. We've got individuals who are working diligently. They may have some history because of whatever reason, but that doesn't mean that I need to get on TV and explain that. I don't feel a burden to do that.
I understand. Let me say this. And I just, like I said, anytime I hear something, like, even though it may not be true, but I hear something that's negative, we're number one in the elimination. And that's troubling. And look, I work for the federal government, Department of Justice, I do contract work now. And I just like to say, everybody's fighting for this county, speaking up for it. And when I hear that we're number one in hiring, like I say, I believe in second chances. Don't misunderstand. I do believe that. But I'm just wondering, how do we get to this?
That's a good question. I can't answer that. I've been superintendent since July. And so when people are hired when people get hired before I get here, I deal with situations as they arise. And so again, I don't place a burden on myself that I should carry. And I'm not going to let this community carry the face of an issue. We've got employees. Someone hired them. That person may be here or may not be here. They're working for us. Things happen while they're on the job for us. We address that. I have terminated individuals this year. And people have to believe that. They have to see that.
I think you answered one of my questions already that you want to do. And at least I know all of them, but you answered one already.
So you must be new to the community if you didn't know the answer to that.
Well, no, I'm not new, but I'm not new. I've been here since '82. Like I say, I've been fighting for things. I'm rolling out HOA. I go to school counselor at Hampton Middle School. And so I've been actively involved in quite a few things. But I love this county.
We do too.
And I know you do. And like I say, anytime I can speak up favorably for it, whatever, I'm going to do it.
Keep doing it.
But you notice I complimented you when I started off when I was dropping that fee. I wanted to get some good and also wanted to ask about something that may not have been.
That's okay. That's good. But you got the response.
Thank you.
All right. Any others? Well, thanks everybody for being here on tonight. It's been great. We look forward to our next one is on next Tuesday. 27th. And what's the name of that center that is located?
How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. Coach Turner, sorry that I'm late. I had other things to do prior to getting here. Opening up the thing from my dynamic dancers for this competition that they have going on this weekend. Hopefully you continue, and hopefully everybody else can continue to dance competition here at White. But I recently had a question to address in that day. And I've been part of the Clayton County Athletic since '94. One of the things I want to know, I've been told that there will be a cut in athletic funds across the board, 50%, and that the new uniforms will be addressed to the every 4 years, every 6 years. And my question is, with these things happening for the kids, and new positions are being created in athletics, and yet we are cutting funds from athletics and adding new positions, how will we address that in the future? Because if it's all about the kids, then new positions that we are creating in athletics, and I want to say new positions that are being created in athletics and not money for kids, equipment, and uniforms, how can that be? And then my second question is, will we ever get someone in athletics that has a vision outside the box? Because a lot of things are presented, and a lot of things are not being done.
Appreciate the second question. You know, that has many implications. I'll just tell you that we're looking at all departments, athletics included, and we have processes and there are strategies and things that we do to improve all departments. And you have to know and believe that we are working to improve those departments. Now, relative to your first question, all departments are cutting because my commitment is to have a balanced budget. But there are no requests that I'm aware of for new positions as we cut, and everyone knows that I wouldn't even consider such. So I don't know where you get your information from, but there are no new positions that I'm considering as we're expecting all departments to cut to ensure that we balance our budget.
Can I respond to that?
Sure.
Okay. Now, the new position that I'm talking about that was created, there was a new position for middle school coordinator on that day.
That was created this year.
Yeah, this year.
And
Okay.
filled this year, right?
Yeah, we filled in this year. And here's my point. If we're going to cut funds from the kids program, then why do we need to create, or why have we created a new position? And there is no money for the kids to participate. Here's my last question. When I speak of outside the box, thinking outside the box, I presented, myself presented 2010 All-Star game. In 2009, I was kicked down. 2010, I became athletic director here at Eddie White. That was my vision to have an All-Star game. They gave me an All-Star party. Announcement party, they gave me the game in 2011. The game has taken off, where all 16 middle schools and high schools are now holding All-Star games. That was a vision of mine. And I'm going to just put it like this. I do things for the kids at Eddie White. I'm here tonight to speak to the kids at Eddie White and the community of Clayton on the south side. All right, with that being said, when we ask for new things, there's always something else that can be done. And I also mentioned when we tried to establish a $35 fee, and that was struck down because some parents could not pay it. But then there was not other ways where we could create the money for those people. When I speak to Eddie White, we're financially stable here. I started the program, and I'm leaving the program in good hands. But I do want to let you know that when we think outside the box, we have to get some young people, or some people that are very enthusiastic about working, around people that are working for the kids.
We agree with you. We agree with you. And always remember, there are always more needs and desires than there are funds. And so that's why we have to be strategic about the funds we have, how we spend. And there are times when we just need to raise additional funds, and my administration, we're even working to get our foundation reestablished so we can have a nonprofit that people can support. As we do better as a school system and our test scores increase, we know people will want to support what's happening in our school system. So we're rebuilding in so many areas. So many areas. It's not going to happen all in 1 year, but we are rebuilding. Thank you.
I just kind of wanted to get back on what you were saying. We know that you are in the danger of funds being cut. So I would say, what about helping to kind of offset, supplement those funds by trying fundraisers, or going out to the community to see if they can donate stuff. You know, they might have to give you certain funds towards uniforms, et cetera, I mean, you see the people, I don't necessarily want kids going out on the street or whatever, but you see the people all up and down the streets or whatever with their hand out, hey, can you help support our football program? You know, and those are things that we probably didn't think about to potentially offset that loss of funds that you know you're going to face, especially if it's done county-wide. You know, Krispy Kreme, Domino's, and like I said, some businesses, you won't know until you ask, but hey, they don't mind actually giving free different supplies. I mean, I don't know all of them, but I'm pretty sure those are programs out there in the community.
It's innovation, creativity, and everybody got to come to the table and roll up the sleeve and do the work.
Watch the card. The host was there.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. Sorry.
Well, since they were speaking of athletics, I just have one question. My son is in the Elite Scholars, and he loves to play football, but Elite Scholars does not have that. When I spoke to the athletic director, the they said that he could not participate in that at another school. Is there a reason why that?
There may be, we would have to research that, so we can let Dr. Simpson know, we'll have to research. There may be.
Okay.
Very good. All right. That's all. The next meeting is next Tuesday at 6 p.m. At the Charlie, Bridgewell Senior Center in Jonesboro. Well, thanks everybody for being here. We'll see you all the next time.